The restaurant was alive with the sound of chatter, clinking glasses, and the occasional laugh. It was one of those places where the walls themselves seemed to hum with wealth and comfort. Every corner had a carefully arranged decoration, and the chandeliers threw soft light over the polished tables. Patrons dined in their elegant outfits, quietly boasting about the latest business deals or social gatherings. Amid all this luxury, a young waitress moved quietly, carrying plates of food with practiced ease. She wore a simple uniform, nothing fancy, yet she walked with a quiet confidence, aware that she belonged there in her own way. Her movements were smooth and careful, almost like a dance. Every step was measured, every action deliberate. She had been working here for a while, and the staff knew her as reliable, kind, and unassuming. Most customers barely noticed her, except for the occasional polite smile or friendly nod. But tonight, something was different. A man, clearly wealthy and used to having attention, sat at a large table in the center of the restaurant. He was sharply dressed, and everything about him spoke of confidence and entitlement. He watched the waitress move from table to table, delivering food with efficiency and grace. He seemed amused, as though he were studying her for some private entertainment. When she approached his table with a fresh tray, he leaned forward slightly, speaking loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear. His voice was smooth, but carried an edge that made people turn their heads. "I bet she can't play the piano," he said, smirking. There was a small piano tucked into the corner of the restaurant, mostly for decoration, but with a few worn keys, suggesting it had been played at some point. The rich man's words drew a few chuckles from his companions. They leaned back in their chairs, ready to see a spectacle of failure. The waitress, carrying the tray, paused for a moment, feeling the weight of the words settle on her shoulders. She glanced at the piano and back at the man, unsure whether he was serious or just mocking her. The room seemed to quiet slightly, sensing the tension. For a moment, she hesitated. She had kept her piano skills private for years, playing only in solitude, away from anyone who might judge her. She remembered the times she had spent practicing on an old, out-of-tune piano in a tiny room, where her fingers had learned the language of music before her lips could even speak words of encouragement. Those memories made her chest tighten. She was not one to seek attention or praise, but something inside her stirred. It was a mix of pride and challenge. She wanted to show that she was more than the uniform and the job that people saw on the surface. The rich man noticed her hesitation and laughed, a sound that echoed across the dining area. "Well, are you going to play, or are you going to waste everyone's time?" he said, tapping his fingers on the table. His friends laughed along, assuming they were about to witness a comedy of errors. The waitress took a deep breath, letting the tension roll off her back like water from a stone. With a quiet nod, she set down the tray on a nearby counter and walked toward the piano. Every eye in the room followed her, curiosity mixing with amusement. Some patrons whispered to each other, guessing that this would be a short, funny interlude. No one suspected that what was about to happen would stop them in their tracks. She reached the piano and sat down, her posture calm but deliberate. She placed her hands over the keys, feeling the texture and the subtle resistance beneath her fingers. The rich man leaned forward, eager to mock, his confidence radiating through the air. He didn't know the years of quiet practice, the countless hours spent perfecting every note, every nuance. He didn't know the nights spent playing in darkness, letting music be a friend when the world felt cold. He didn't know that this simple woman carried a story in her fingertips, a story that could reach hearts without a single word. She began with a single tentative note. It was soft, almost hesitant, but it was pure and clear. The sound caught the attention of the diners nearby. Some looked up from their meals, curious about the sudden shift in atmosphere. The rich man's smirk faltered slightly. He leaned back in his chair, thinking it might just be a fluke, but something in the air told him it was more than that. The second note followed, and then the third. The melody was delicate, weaving through the restaurant like a gentle breeze, touching each listener without demanding attention. The waitress's fingers moved with precision and grace, her years of practice becoming visible in the flow of the music. At first, the patrons were unsure. Some murmured, wondering if they had heard correctly. Some raised their eyebrows, intrigued. The rich man's friends exchanged glances, still expecting the eventual collapse into failure. But the notes continued, each one more confident than the last. The melody grew, not in volume but in depth, filling the space with emotion and subtle complexity. The waitress did not rush. She let the music speak, letting each chord carry weight and meaning. The restaurant, once a place of casual conversation and laughter, transformed into a hall of quiet attention. Diners held their forks mid-air, captivated by the unexpected performance. The rich man began to feel a creeping unease. He had intended to entertain himself by mocking her, but the music pierced through his carefully maintained world of control and amusement. He watched as the waitress's eyes remained calm, focused on the keys, her face serene. There was no arrogance, no desire to show off. It was as if the music was an extension of herself, a part of her story finally speaking aloud. The rich man shifted in his seat, trying to maintain his composure, but he could not hide the flicker of doubt crossing his expression. He had underestimated her entirely. Meanwhile, other staff members, who had always seen her as quiet and unassuming, were watching in awe. Some whispered to each other, unable to contain their surprise. Others had to steady themselves, feeling emotions welling up as the music wrapped around them like a warm embrace. The energy in the room changed. It was no longer a place of mere dining, but a space where something extraordinary was unfolding in plain sight. The waitress continued, her fingers gliding effortlessly, each note carefully chosen and delivered with feeling. It was not about speed or complexity. It was about connection, about speaking to the hearts of those listening. The rich man's laughter had disappeared. He tried to hide it behind a cough, shifting in his chair, but it was clear to anyone watching that his confidence had been shaken. The melody carried weight and emotion that no words could capture. Patrons were leaning forward, unable to pull their attention away from the piano. Some had tears in their eyes, though they tried discreetly to wipe them away. The waitress's quiet intensity drew them in, her story unfolding with every key she pressed. The rich man's friends were now silent, realizing that the entertainment they had expected was not what they had received. It was something far more profound and unexpected. By the time she reached the middle of her performance, the room had become a mixture of awe and reverence. Diners had forgotten about their conversations, their meals, and even the ostentatious presence of wealth around them. They were caught in the spell of the music, each note telling a story that was uniquely hers. The rich man sat rigidly, unable to maintain his usual smug demeanor. He had thought he could control the situation, that the waitress's talent would be a joke for his amusement. Instead, he was confronted with something genuine, something that could not be bought or manipulated. The realization unsettled him in a way he had not expected. The waitress continued to play, her hands dancing over the keys, her eyes occasionally closing as she felt the music flow through her. She was aware of the audience, but not intimidated by them. She was no longer a waitress serving tables. She was a storyteller, a conduit for emotions that had long been hidden. Patrons were leaning closer, some holding hands with companions, sharing the experience quietly, as though the music belonged to everyone yet touched each one personally. When she finally let the last note linger, the restaurant was silent for a moment, as if the world itself had paused to listen. The rich man's mouth opened, then closed, unsure what to say. The audience remained still, caught in the aftermath of something beautiful and unexpected. Finally, one by one, the sound of applause began, small at first, then growing louder until the entire room was clapping and cheering. Patrons rose from their seats, some standing, some cheering, moved by the talent and humility of the woman they had just witnessed. The rich man could only watch, humbled and speechless, realizing that the bet he had made was irrelevant. The true victory was hers, in the music she had shared and the hearts she had touched. The waitress, calm and composed, allowed herself a small, modest smile, knowing that for a brief moment she had shown the world who she truly was. After the first performance, the restaurant seemed transformed. The air felt lighter, charged with excitement and curiosity. Patrons could not stop talking about the waitress, the quiet young woman who had stunned everyone with her piano playing. The rich man, who had been so confident and mocking before, sat back in his chair, his face a mixture of disbelief and grudging admiration. He had thought he could turn her into a spectacle for his amusement, but he now realized he had witnessed something extraordinary. He tried to mask his feelings, but there was no hiding them completely. Even he felt a strange respect growing inside him for the woman who had turned his bet into a performance that would be remembered. The waitress returned to her duties, but there was a new energy around her. She carried plates and refilled glasses, but now there were glances of recognition from the patrons she served. Some whispered to each other, praising her, while others offered polite nods and smiles. She felt a strange mixture of pride and humility, realizing that her secret talent had finally found an audience. Yet she did not let it change the way she moved or spoke. Her calm demeanor remained intact, and she continued to treat every table and every guest with the same quiet care she always had. Back in the corner, the piano sat quietly, its worn keys now touched by something extraordinary. Some patrons were tempted to approach it, to try to play it themselves, but none dared. There was a sense of reverence in the air, an acknowledgement that the piano had been part of something much bigger than music alone. It had been the medium through which a hidden story was revealed. The rich man's companions whispered among themselves, impressed and unsettled at the same time. They had expected a joke, a moment of laughter at someone else's expense, but instead they had been moved. They could not ignore the skill, the emotion, or the control that the waitress displayed. The rich man leaned closer to his friends, speaking in a low tone, though his voice carried hints of awe. "I didn't expect that. She really can play." His companions nodded, trying to hide their surprise. One of them even admitted quietly, "I didn't think anyone could make that piano sound like that." Their conversations were a mixture of admiration and disbelief, and each word seemed to reinforce the extraordinary nature of what had just occurred. The rich man, used to being the center of attention and influence, felt a strange humility creep into him. He had tried to challenge her, to make a game of her skill, and yet he had been outdone by grace, patience, and talent. Meanwhile, the waitress moved to the next table, serving food and refilling drinks. She smiled politely at each guest, keeping the magic of the performance alive in subtle ways. Every so often, a diner would pause to watch her, a quiet smile on their face, remembering the music that had just filled the room. Her fingers had told stories without words, and now the patrons seemed to carry those stories with them. It was not just a performance. It was a gift, and it had left a mark on everyone who had witnessed it. The restaurant staff exchanged glances, sharing in a quiet pride. They had known her as a dedicated and kind worker, but none had ever realized the depth of her talent. Some whispered excitedly, discussing how she had transformed an ordinary night into an unforgettable experience. Others quietly resolved to watch her more closely in the future, wondering what other hidden talents she might possess. There was a new sense of respect that ran through the staff, a recognition that sometimes the most remarkable people were not the ones who shouted the loudest or sought attention, but the ones who quietly carried extraordinary abilities inside them. As the evening continued, the rich man's attention remained on her. He could not take his eyes off the waitress, now fully aware of her skills and the impact she had on the room. He had expected to dominate the evening, to create a story where he was the clever and powerful one, and yet he had been completely undone by her quiet excellence. He watched as she moved from table to table, her composure flawless, her movements elegant and precise. Every gesture, every polite word, carried the weight of someone who had endured, practiced, and remained humble despite her abilities. Some of the patrons, emboldened by curiosity, approached her. They asked questions about her background, her training, and how she had learned to play so beautifully. She responded with a soft smile, offering answers without boasting. She spoke of small lessons, of practicing quietly in a room where no one could hear, and of learning to find joy in music even when life was difficult. Her words were simple, honest, and deeply human. People listened, captivated not just by her music, but by her story. They realized that talent often comes with struggle, patience, and a deep sense of personal dedication. The rich man, still seated at his table, found himself listening too. He had expected to witness failure and ridicule, but instead he had encountered a story of perseverance and grace. The realization was humbling. He had assumed that wealth, confidence, and influence were enough to dominate any situation. Yet here he was, challenged not by money or status, but by someone who had quietly mastered a craft and was willing to share it with the world. His companions watched his reaction carefully, sensing a subtle change in his demeanor. He was no longer the center of attention. The waitress had taken that role effortlessly. Over the next hour, the restaurant settled into a rhythm that was different from usual. Patrons spoke in softer tones, carrying with them the memory of the piano performance. Waiters moved with renewed energy, inspired by the example set by their colleague. The rich man sat quietly, reflecting on what he had seen. He had learned an unexpected lesson. Talent, humility, and dedication could outweigh wealth, arrogance, and power. He could not deny the truth of what had unfolded before him. For the first time, he felt a sense of admiration that was genuine, not performative. The waitress continued to serve, her demeanor unchanged. She moved gracefully through the restaurant, attentive to every need and polite to every guest. Yet beneath her calm exterior, there was a quiet satisfaction. She had stepped into the spotlight, shared her gift, and touched the hearts of those around her. She did not seek fame or reward, but she felt a deep contentment in knowing that her talent had been recognized, if only for a moment. The music had told her story more powerfully than words ever could. As the night went on, a few more patrons approached the piano, gently placing their hands on the keys, but none dared to play. They had experienced something special, and the respect for the waitress's performance held them back. It was clear that what she had done was not just skillful. It was meaningful. The rich man, observing this, realized that his initial bet had created an opportunity for something far greater than he could have imagined. He had been part of a moment where talent, humility, and courage intersected, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. By the end of the evening, the restaurant was buzzing with stories of the performance. People spoke of the quiet waitress who had stunned them with her music. Social media posts began to circulate, sharing the story and praising her talent. The staff were quietly proud, knowing that one of their own had achieved something remarkable. And the rich man, who had come expecting amusement and superiority, left with a newfound respect for the woman who had effortlessly claimed the attention and admiration of everyone in the room. It was a night that none of them would forget, a night where the simple act of sharing one's gift transformed a routine evening into a memory that would last forever. The next day, the restaurant felt different, though nothing had changed physically. The same polished tables and sparkling chandeliers remained. The same rich smells of food and wine filled the air, and the same bustling staff moved between tables. Yet there was an invisible current of anticipation, a feeling that something extraordinary had happened, and its echoes were still present. The story of the previous night's performance had spread quickly, carried by patrons who had witnessed it and now shared it with friends, family, and colleagues. People entered the restaurant with an awareness that something remarkable had taken place here, that the waitress who had quietly served them might also hold a talent they could only imagine. The waitress arrived for her shift as usual. She wore the same simple uniform, her hair tied neatly back and a calm expression on her face. She had not sought attention, nor had she wanted it, but she could feel the eyes of some staff members and early arriving patrons following her. There was a mixture of curiosity, admiration, and even a little awe in their gazes. She moved with her usual grace, quietly preparing for her work, but inside her chest, a small pulse of pride reminded her of what she had accomplished. She had shared her music, touched people, and left an impression that would last far beyond a single night. Her first table was occupied by a family who had heard the story. The father smiled warmly as she approached. "We heard about your piano playing last night," he said. "Would you play for us if you have a moment?" The request made her pause for a brief moment. She was used to serving food and attending to their needs, not performing for guests, but she recognized the sincerity in their eyes. With a polite nod, she walked to the piano at the corner, her movements calm and unassuming. Her fingers rested gently on the keys, as if reconnecting with an old friend. She did not need to prepare. The music lived in her hands, waiting to flow naturally when the moment came. The family watched in anticipation, the younger children leaning forward, eyes wide with curiosity. When the first notes emerged, soft and deliberate, a hush fell over the nearby tables. Her fingers moved with the same precision and grace as the night before, each note carrying a story of quiet determination, practice, and heart. The melody was familiar yet fresh, flowing through the room like a gentle river, winding its way into the hearts of listeners. The family was spellbound, the children whispering to each other about how beautiful the music was. The parents exchanged glances, their smiles broad, silently acknowledging the rare gift they were witnessing as the music continued. Other diners paused their conversations to listen. Some had heard the story already and wanted to see for themselves. Others were unaware, yet the sound of the piano captured their attention naturally. The rich man, who had returned to the restaurant, sat at his usual table, silently observing. He had been curious to see whether her performance had been a one-time event or a true reflection of her talent. As her fingers moved over the keys, he realized that her skill was consistent, deliberate, and emotionally powerful. He could not hide the respect forming in his eyes. What he had witnessed the previous night was not luck, but true mastery. For the waitress, the performance was not about proving herself or gaining recognition. It was about sharing a part of herself that had long been kept private. Each note, each chord, each gentle pause was an expression of her journey, her struggles, and her dedication. Patrons felt it instinctively, drawn into the music in a way that went beyond simple appreciation. Some sat quietly, letting the melody wash over them. Others closed their eyes, imagining the story behind each note. A few even wiped away tears discreetly, overwhelmed by the unexpected depth of feeling the music conveyed. The rich man's friends leaned closer to him, speaking in hushed tones. "She's incredible," one whispered. "I didn't expect someone like her to play like that." Another nodded in agreement, clearly affected. The rich man himself remained silent, though his usual air of superiority had vanished. He was watching, absorbing, and understanding that the world had a way of surprising even those who believed they controlled everything. He had thought he could entertain himself by betting on her failure. Yet here he was, humbled by her quiet strength and undeniable talent. Meanwhile, the restaurant staff watched with admiration. Some exchanged quiet smiles, proud that their colleague had achieved something extraordinary. Others felt inspired, reconsidering their own abilities and dreams. The waitress had become a symbol of what dedication, humility, and talent could accomplish. It was a reminder that not all stories were told loudly, that remarkable individuals often lived quietly among them, unnoticed until the right moment revealed their gifts. The atmosphere in the restaurant shifted subtly. There was a deeper appreciation for the people around them, for the ordinary individuals who carried extraordinary potential. When the performance ended, applause erupted once again, not loud but filled with genuine admiration. Patrons clapped, some standing, others exchanging smiles and whispered comments about the beauty of what they had heard. The rich man, for the first time, joined in without hesitation, his hands clapping with sincerity. He had learned something important about humility and the power of hidden talent. The woman who had once seemed like just a waitress had now become the focus of admiration and respect for everyone present. She acknowledged the applause with a modest nod, allowing the moment to exist without seeking more attention. As the evening progressed, more requests came for music. Some patrons asked if she could play specific pieces, while others simply wanted her to continue with whatever felt right. She obliged gracefully, her fingers gliding effortlessly across the keys, her presence calm and unassuming. The richness of her playing captivated the audience, creating an atmosphere that was both intimate and magical. Conversations became softer, meals slower, as people allowed themselves to be enveloped by the music. The restaurant, often a place of casual dining and background chatter, became a space where emotion, beauty, and talent were at the center of attention. The rich man found himself reflecting on the previous night and the current performance. He had believed he could dominate the situation with wealth and confidence, but he had been outmatched by grace, humility, and skill. His perspective shifted as he watched the waitress share her gift without arrogance. He began to understand that power and influence could not replace genuine talent or the emotional impact of sincerity. Her music reminded him that some of life's most meaningful experiences could not be bought or controlled. They could only be felt, appreciated, and respected. Patrons began sharing stories with each other about what the music made them feel. Some spoke of memories that the melodies evoked, some described emotions that they had not expected to confront, and others simply expressed wonder at the skill and dedication of the young woman. The waitress, though aware of their attention, did not let it distract her. She moved naturally between tables, served dishes, and played when asked, all with the same composed and gentle energy. Her presence became both soothing and inspiring, a quiet force that influenced the mood of everyone around her. Throughout the evening, the richness of her performance was not measured by applause or recognition alone, but by the impact on those who listened. Some diners left with a renewed sense of appreciation for art, others with a deeper understanding of perseverance and humility, and some with inspiration to pursue their own hidden talents. The waitress's performance had become a catalyst for reflection, for emotional connection, and for recognition of the extraordinary within the ordinary. By the time the night drew to a close, the restaurant had transformed into a space where music and humanity intertwined. Patrons left with a sense of having experienced something rare, something that went beyond dining or entertainment. The rich man left as well, quietly moved, no longer focused on his bet or amusement, but on the realization that he had witnessed genuine talent and grace. The staff, too, reflected on the evening, inspired by the quiet strength and capability of the woman they had always known, but never fully appreciated. As the last customers departed, the waitress sat at the piano one final time, allowing her fingers to dance across the keys in a brief, simple melody that echoed the emotions of the evening. It was a moment of reflection, a pause to honor the journey that had brought her here, and a quiet acknowledgement that her music had touched lives. The piano, once an unnoticed fixture, had become a vessel for her story, her passion, and her connection to the world. The night had reaffirmed what she already knew. Talent, perseverance, and humility could create moments of true magic, moments that would linger in the hearts of those fortunate enough to witness them. The evening sun cast a warm glow through the restaurant's large windows, painting the polished floors and ornate chandeliers with golden light. The atmosphere was calmer than the previous night, but an underlying excitement lingered, fueled by the stories that had circulated among the city's social circles. People arrived with curiosity in their eyes, hoping to witness the woman who had astonished everyone with her music. The waitress moved among the tables, carrying trays and refilling glasses. Yet there was a sense of quiet confidence about her. She was aware of the whispers and glances, but she did not let them distract her. Her focus remained on her work and the music that lived within her. A piano sat in its usual corner, seemingly waiting for her. Its keys, worn but well-loved, held the memory of the previous night's performance. Patrons occasionally glanced toward it, unsure if they might be about to hear more music or simply admire the instrument's presence. The rich man, who had once tried to bet against her, watched from his table, his curiosity piqued. He had returned to see whether her talent was consistent, whether it had been a fleeting moment or a true reflection of her skill. As she approached the piano, the restaurant seemed to quiet instinctively, as if holding its breath in anticipation. The waitress took her seat and allowed her fingers to rest lightly on the keys. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, feeling the familiar texture and resistance beneath her fingertips. Music had always been a part of her life, a companion through lonely nights and challenging days. It had taught her patience, resilience, and expression in ways words never could. Tonight, she was ready to share it again, not to prove herself, but to allow the melody to connect with the hearts of those listening. The first notes were gentle, weaving a soft tapestry of sound that filled the restaurant. Patrons leaned forward, caught off guard by the depth and clarity of the music. The melody was both intricate and natural, flowing with ease, yet carrying an emotional weight that resonated deeply. The children at nearby tables sat still, mesmerized, while adults exchanged glances that spoke of wonder and admiration. The waitress's fingers moved with precision and fluidity, her years of quiet practice manifesting effortlessly in every chord. Each note seemed intentional, each pause meaningful, as if she were telling a story that had been waiting for the right moment to unfold. The rich man watched in silence, a mixture of awe and respect settling over him. He had believed that he could control the evening, that he could influence the outcome with his bet and his presence. Yet here he was, humbled by a performance that transcended his expectations. He realized that wealth and confidence could not compete with genuine talent and dedication. He could not hide his admiration, nor did he try. He had underestimated the quiet power of a person who had honed their craft in solitude, and it was a lesson that weighed heavily on him. As the music continued, the room seemed to transform. Conversations hushed, utensils were set down, and even the staff paused in their duties to listen. There was a shared sense of reverence, a recognition that something extraordinary was happening. Patrons felt the music touch them in ways they could not explain, evoking memories, emotions, and a sense of connection to the human experience. Some closed their eyes, letting the melodies guide them, while others watched in awe, unable to tear their gaze away from the graceful movements of her hands. The waitress did not play for recognition or applause. She played to communicate, to share the language of her heart with those around her. Every chord was deliberate, every tempo measured, yet infused with feeling. Patrons began to respond instinctively, tapping fingers gently on the table in rhythm, swaying subtly in their chairs, or simply absorbing the emotion in silence. The music created an invisible thread that connected everyone in the room, from the wealthiest guests to the youngest children, from the staff to the regular patrons. For a brief moment, social hierarchies faded, replaced by a collective experience of beauty and emotion. The rich man leaned forward slightly, noticing the reactions around him. He could see the subtle ways people were affected, how some wiped away tears, how others whispered to companions, trying to articulate the impact of the music. It was no longer a performance. It was a shared human experience. He felt a pang of humility, a recognition that he had been wrong to doubt the young woman who had now captured the hearts of everyone present. He had thought to control the situation, to make amusement out of her abilities. And instead, he had been swept away by the force of her talent and the sincerity of her expression. Staff members, who had long admired her quiet dedication, now saw her in a new light. They observed the concentration in her eyes, the fluidity of her movements, and the way she commanded the attention of the room without saying a word. Some felt inspired, reconsidering their own hidden talents and dreams, realizing that there was strength in humility and perseverance. The restaurant, usually a place of routine and predictable interactions, had become a stage for something profoundly moving. The waitress had become the center of not only attention, but also admiration, her presence radiating an unspoken authority born from skill, patience, and dedication. As the evening progressed, the music evolved. She shifted from gentle, reflective pieces to more dynamic and expressive melodies, demonstrating not only technical skill, but also an emotional depth that resonated with every listener. The patrons were drawn into the ebb and flow of the performance, experiencing the highs and lows, the tension and release, as though they were part of a living story. Even the children, who had initially watched with wide-eyed curiosity, now followed the music intently, sensing the emotional narrative behind each note. The rich man's companions whispered among themselves, their voices tinged with astonishment. "She's remarkable," one said quietly. "I never imagined someone like her could command the room like that." Another nodded, clearly moved. The rich man remained silent, absorbing the lesson. He had sought entertainment at her expense, but he had discovered something far more profound: humility, talent, and the power of genuine expression could create a lasting impression that wealth and status could not replicate. The music reached a crescendo, filling the room with a powerful blend of emotion and technical mastery. Patrons leaned forward, completely absorbed, while the staff paused in their work, caught in the beauty of the moment. The waitress's hands moved deftly across the keys, each note deliberate, each chord carrying weight. It was as if she were speaking to everyone simultaneously, telling a story that transcended language, social class, and expectation. The room held its collective breath, suspended in a moment that felt eternal. When the final notes faded, silence followed, profound and deep. Patrons sat quietly for a moment, allowing the resonance of the music to settle within them. Then applause erupted, first soft and tentative, then growing into a full, heartfelt response. Some rose from their seats, clapping enthusiastically, while others cheered, moved beyond words. The rich man joined in, unable to resist the genuine admiration that had replaced his previous arrogance. He realized that the applause was not just for the performance, but for the courage, dedication, and authenticity that had brought it to life. The waitress acknowledged the applause with a gentle nod, her expression calm and modest. She did not seek further recognition. The music itself had communicated everything necessary. Patrons whispered to each other about the experience, sharing their feelings and observations, creating a network of appreciation and connection. The restaurant, usually a place of routine and social performance, had become a space where human emotion, talent, and humility converged to create something unforgettable. As the evening drew to a close, The waitress returned to her work, serving the remaining guests with her usual grace and attention. Yet now there was a subtle difference in how she moved through the space. Patrons looked at her differently, with a newfound respect, curiosity, and admiration. The rich man, reflecting on the events, understood that he had witnessed a transformation, not only in the perception of the waitress, but also in himself. He had learned that true power lay not in wealth or influence, but in the ability to cultivate skill, maintain humility, and connect with others authentically. By the end of the night, the restaurant was quiet again, the last patrons leaving with a sense of having experienced something rare and profound. The piano sat in its corner, now a symbol of creativity, talent, and emotional connection. The waitress cleaned her station, her movements calm and deliberate, knowing that she had shared her gift once again. She felt the quiet satisfaction of having reached hearts and minds, of having created a moment that would linger in memory. The evening had shown that the simplest gestures, when performed with skill, passion, and sincerity, could leave the most lasting impression. The story of her performance would continue to circulate, not for spectacle or fame, but as a testament to the power of talent, humility, and the courage to share one's true self with the world. The restaurant was quieter than usual, but the warmth of the evening created a comfortable, inviting atmosphere. The sun had set, and soft lights illuminated the tables, casting gentle shadows across the polished floor. Patrons moved about quietly, speaking in low tones, their attention occasionally drawn to the piano in the corner. The story of the young waitress's talent had spread further, creating a ripple effect. People came not only for the food, but also for a chance to witness the extraordinary woman, whose music had captivated everyone who had heard it. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, a feeling that tonight could become another unforgettable evening. The waitress moved gracefully among the tables, refilling glasses and clearing plates, her calm presence steadying the rhythm of the restaurant. Her simple uniform and quiet demeanor belied the depth of her talent and the strength of her character. She had long learned to balance humility with skill, allowing her abilities to speak for themselves without arrogance. Each step she took, each plate she carried, seemed purposeful yet unassuming. Patrons who had seen her perform before watched with a mixture of admiration and curiosity, sensing that she carried something remarkable within her as she approached the piano. A few new guests at the restaurant noticed the familiar instrument and asked quietly if she would play again. She smiled politely and nodded, sliding onto the bench with ease. Her fingers rested lightly on the keys, poised to bring life to the melodies that had become part of her soul. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, letting the familiar energy of the piano envelop her. The room fell into a gentle hush, and even the staff paused in their work, sensing that something special was about to unfold once more. The first notes were delicate, floating through the air like a soft breeze. Patrons leaned in, listening intently, caught by the unexpected grace and fluidity of her playing. Her hands moved with confidence, each note deliberate yet infused with emotion. The melody flowed naturally, telling a story that words could not capture. It spoke of perseverance, quiet strength, and the beauty of patience. Even the children at nearby tables were entranced, their eyes wide, absorbing the music in a way that suggested they understood its power on a level beyond their years. The rich man, seated at his usual table, watched with quiet fascination. His earlier arrogance had vanished, replaced by a sincere appreciation for her skill. He realized that he had underestimated her, that he had assumed wealth and confidence could dictate outcomes. But here he was, witnessing a talent that transcended status or expectation. He leaned back, observing the room's reaction as others became captivated by the performance. Patrons' faces reflected emotions ranging from awe to wonder, a mixture of quiet joy and contemplative silence. The waitress continued to play, allowing her fingers to tell a story of dedication, struggle, and triumph. Each chord was purposeful, every pause deliberate, allowing the music to breathe and resonate. Patrons who had been skeptical or indifferent were now completely engaged, drawn in by the authenticity of her performance. The staff, who had long admired her work ethic, felt a renewed sense of pride and inspiration. They realized that her strength did not come from seeking recognition, but from a deep love for her craft. From countless hours of practice in quiet solitude. Throughout the performance, the music created a shared emotional experience. Patrons felt a connection, not only to the melody, but also to each other. Conversations had ceased, and a collective silence held the room, broken only by the rich, flowing sounds of the piano. The young children absorbed the music with innocent wonder, while adults felt memories and emotions stirring within them. Some whispered softly to companions, unable to articulate the depth of what they were experiencing. The waitress did not need to perform for applause. She played to share something deeply human, a language of emotion that everyone in the room could understand. The rich man found himself reflecting on his initial intentions and the lesson he had learned. He had come seeking amusement at the expense of someone he believed to be insignificant. Instead, he had been shown humility, artistry, and the profound impact of talent expressed with sincerity. The realization was humbling. He could not claim ownership of the moment or control its effect. He could only witness and appreciate it. This understanding shifted his perspective, fostering a sense of respect that he had not felt before. As the performance progressed, the waitress's music evolved. She moved seamlessly from gentle, reflective passages to more dynamic, expressive sections. Her skill was evident not just in technical mastery, but also in emotional storytelling. Patrons were completely absorbed, feeling the rise and fall of the music as though it were a living thing. The melody carried them through moments of calm and intensity, creating an immersive experience that transcended the ordinary. Even those who had been critical or skeptical before were captivated, their earlier judgments swept away by the undeniable power of her performance. The staff observed her with renewed admiration. They had always known her as reliable and kind, but now they recognized the full extent of her talent. The experience inspired them to reflect on their own potential, to consider what hidden skills or passions they might possess. The waitress's performance became a quiet lesson in perseverance, humility, and the transformative power of dedication. She had not sought to dominate the room or command attention, yet her presence and skill created a natural authority and influence that drew everyone in as the music reached its emotional peak. The room was fully immersed in the story she was telling. Patrons experienced a range of emotions: joy, nostalgia, hope, and even moments of melancholy. The rich man, observing the collective reaction, felt a profound sense of realization. He had thought the evening would be one of amusement and dominance, yet it had become a moment of connection, a shared human experience that no amount of wealth could replicate. He understood that he had been humbled, not by chance, but by a person who had mastered her craft and shared it with honesty and passion. The final notes lingered in the air, creating a quiet space for reflection. Patrons remained still, allowing the resonance of the music to settle within them. Then, gradually, applause began to rise, first tentative, then swelling into a wave of genuine admiration and respect. Some stood, clapping enthusiastically, while others cheered quietly, moved by the performance. The rich man joined in, his hands clapping sincerely. Acknowledging the extraordinary skill and courage he had witnessed, the waitress smiled modestly. Acknowledging the applause without seeking additional recognition, she had shared her gift, communicated her story, and touched the hearts of those around her. The impact of her performance extended beyond the music itself. It was in the reactions, the emotions, and the connections formed among the patrons and staff. The restaurant, once a space of routine dining, had become a place of shared humanity and artistic expression. As the evening continued, patrons approached her to express their admiration, ask questions about her training, or simply share how deeply they had been moved. She responded with kindness and humility, speaking softly about her love for music, the discipline it required, and the joy it brought her. Her words were simple, yet they resonated with everyone she spoke to. Patrons left the restaurant not only full from their meals, but also enriched by the experience of witnessing someone's talent expressed with such authenticity and grace. The rich man remained at his table, reflecting on the lessons he had learned. He had arrived expecting amusement, only to be humbled by talent, dedication, and humility. He realized that true influence was not about wealth or status, but about the impact one could have on others through skill, sincerity, and the willingness to share one's gifts. The waitress had shown him, and everyone present, that greatness often resides in those who remain quiet, dedicated, and true to themselves. By the end of the night, the restaurant returned to a quieter rhythm. Patrons left with stories to share, inspired by the young woman who had transformed a simple space into a stage of emotion and connection. The waitress cleaned her station, her movements calm and deliberate, reflecting on the evening with quiet satisfaction. She had not sought fame or recognition, but she had shared her gift in a way that created lasting impressions. The piano sat in its corner, a silent witness to the extraordinary talent that had graced it once more. The evening had reinforced what she already knew. Skill, humility, and dedication could leave a lasting impact, touching hearts and creating memories that would endure far beyond the final note. The restaurant had a quiet hum as the evening settled in, but there was an unmistakable energy that lingered from the past few nights of performances. Patrons who had heard about the waitress's piano playing arrived with eager curiosity, and even those who were there for dinner found themselves drawn to the corner where the piano sat, warm but proud from the attention it had received. The young woman moved with her usual calm and grace, attending to her duties, her movements fluid and deliberate. Her simple uniform hid nothing but revealed everything. Beneath her quiet exterior was a depth of talent and heart that had now become the soul of the restaurant. She approached a table where an older couple sat quietly, their eyes sparkling with anticipation. They had heard stories of her skill, and their curiosity was palpable. As she delivered their meals, they asked softly, almost shyly, if she might play a piece for them. She smiled politely, and without hesitation, made her way to the piano. Patrons around the room instinctively paused, their attention drawn to the corner as though sensing that another moment of beauty was about to unfold. The waitress seated herself and allowed her fingers to rest lightly on the keys. Closing her eyes, she inhaled a steady breath, centering herself. Music was not just sound. It was an expression of life, emotion, and experience. She was ready to share that with anyone willing to listen. The first notes were gentle and deliberate, touching the air with a softness that seemed to settle everyone in the room. Patrons turned their heads, children quieted, and conversations faded into respectful silence. The melody began to weave a story, one of quiet strength and resilience. Her hands moved with grace, each note carefully placed, yet naturally flowing into the next. It was as if the music itself had a life of its own, telling stories that words could not convey. Each chord carried a sense of emotion that reached out to touch hearts, evoking feelings of nostalgia, hope, and quiet joy. The rich man, seated at his usual spot, watched intently. His earlier arrogance had long since vanished, replaced by sincere admiration. He realized how wrong he had been to bet against her, to see her as merely a subject of amusement. Now, witnessing her once more, he saw the depth of her dedication, the years of practice, and the courage it took to share her music with the world. The applause and admiration from previous nights had been well earned, and he understood that wealth, status, An influence could not create the kind of impact that genuine talent and humility could. The waitress continued to play, her fingers dancing over the keys with precision and fluidity. The melodies shifted seamlessly between calm, reflective passages and dynamic, expressive sections. Each change in tempo and tone seemed intentional, creating an emotional journey that the audience followed intuitively. Patrons experienced a mix of feelings. Some remembered long-forgotten memories. Some felt a stirring of dreams and aspirations, and others simply felt the soothing comfort of the music. The performance was intimate yet expansive, touching everyone present in different, yet equally profound ways. Staff members moved quietly through the restaurant, serving guests and observing the performance with admiration. They had always known the young waitress as capable and kind, but witnessing her talent fully revealed the extraordinary dimension of her abilities. Some felt inspired, reflecting on their own passions and the potential they might hold. It became evident that her influence extended beyond the music itself. She had created a ripple effect, encouraging reflection, appreciation, and aspiration in those around her throughout the evening. Patrons approached her with quiet respect, asking questions about her training, her favorite pieces, and what inspired her to play. She answered humbly, sharing glimpses of her journey without boast or pretension. She spoke of long hours of practice, of nights spent playing in solitude, and of the quiet joy she found in music. Her words were simple, yet they resonated deeply with the listeners. People felt the authenticity in her voice, the sincerity behind her story. It was evident that her music was not performed for applause or attention, but because it was a natural expression of her being. The rich man reflected on his own journey as he observed the audience and the waitress. He had been someone used to control, influence, and certainty, yet he had learned that there were forces far greater than wealth and power. Humility, skill, patience, and authenticity could move people in ways money never could. He had entered the restaurant expecting amusement and dominance, but he was now witnessing a lesson in humanity, empathy, and respect. Each note, each chord, each pause reminded him that influence and control are fleeting, but the impact of genuine talent and kindness endures. As the performance progressed, the music reached a crescendo. It was neither loud nor overpowering, but emotionally intense, carrying a profound depth that resonated in every corner of the room. Patrons were completely immersed, some leaning forward, some closing their eyes, all attentive and affected by the skill and sincerity they witnessed. The children watched with quiet awe, their young minds absorbing the beauty, the dedication, and the story hidden in every note. Adults, too, found themselves emotionally engaged, touched by the power of authenticity expressed through music. The waitress's hands moved effortlessly over the keys, each motion confident yet gentle, commanding attention without seeking it. She had become the quiet center of the room, the unifying thread connecting patrons, staff, and even the initially skeptical rich man. The music was not just sound. It was a bridge connecting human hearts, a language understood universally. There was a sense of unity in the restaurant, a shared experience that transcended social status, background, or personal difference. As the final notes lingered, the room remained in reflective silence for a moment. Patrons felt the resonance of the music settle within them, carrying emotions and memories in a way that was both personal and communal. Then, gradually, applause began to rise. It was sincere, heartfelt, and unanimous. Some patrons stood, clapping enthusiastically, while others whispered praises or shared smiles of mutual understanding. The rich man joined in, his hands clapping with genuine respect, acknowledging the extraordinary skill and courage he had witnessed. He realized that the applause was for more than talent. It was for humility, dedication, and the courage to share a gift with the world without expectation. The waitress acknowledged the applause with a quiet nod, her modesty intact. She had shared her gift, told her story, and created a moment that touched many lives. Patrons left the restaurant feeling enriched, inspired, and moved, carrying with them the memory of an extraordinary performance. The staff, too, reflected on the evening, their respect and admiration deepened by the example set before them. The piano, once a silent fixture, now held the imprint of her talent, a symbol of dedication, grace, and human connection. As the restaurant emptied and quiet returned, the waitress sat at the piano one final time, running her fingers across the keys in a soft, reflective melody. It was a private moment, a chance to honor the journey that had led her here and the lives she had touched through her music. The room was silent, holding only the echo of her dedication and the quiet reverence of a night that had become memorable for everyone present. She allowed herself a small, satisfied smile, knowing that her music had not only expressed her talent, but had also created lasting impressions, connected hearts, and inspired those who had witnessed it. The rich man departed quietly, his mind heavy with reflection. He had expected entertainment at the expense of another, but he left with a deeper understanding of humility, respect, and the power of authentic talent. He realized that true influence comes not from wealth or authority, but from the ability to create impact through skill, dedication, and sincerity. The waitress had demonstrated that quietly, without seeking recognition, but by simply being herself and sharing her gift. By the end of the night, the restaurant had returned to its usual calm rhythm, yet there was an undeniable shift. Patrons and staff alike had been touched by the experience, their perspective on talent, humility, and human connection subtly transformed. The piano, once merely a decorative instrument, now stood as a testament to dedication, courage, and the beauty of expressing one's inner gifts. The young woman returned to her duties with a quiet sense of fulfillment, aware that her music had created moments of genuine connection and inspiration. She had not sought fame or praise, yet she had touched lives in a way that would be remembered long after the final note faded. The evening reinforced the timeless lesson that skill, humility, and the willingness to share one's talents with sincerity can leave an impact far greater than anyone could predict. A legacy carried in the hearts of those fortunate enough to witness it.